Hey everybody, welcome to TechStrong TV. Today is Tuesday, January 5th, 2021. Welcome to a new year. We are all very excited about the year ahead. And this is, I guess, the first official episode of TechStrong TV for 2021. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, sitting in for Alan Schimmel, and we have an amazing lineup of interviews on today's show. We start off with an interview between Alan and Ariel Asaraf of Corelogics. They talk about Corelogics 2020, which was a good one for them. They raised $25 million in funding, and they released their analytics solution called Streama. So Alan and Ariel have a great discussion about observability, how Streama is going to help with observability, and really talk about what Corelogics is doing for the year ahead. Then he has an interview with Dan Cobron from a company called Paperspace. Paperspace is in the machine learning ML ops space. Alan and Dan actually have a conversation about the ML ops space in general, how machine learning can help in DevOps, and they have a great conversation. It's got a lot of good information in there. So if you've been interested in ML ops, definitely take a listen to this interview. It's a good one. Okay, after that, Alan has a conversation with Yogesh Gupta from Progress Software. They have expanded a lot in the last year, and it really seems that Progress Software has software for everyone in the IT space. They recently added Chef as part of their team, so they're expanding more into the DevOps space as well. So Alan and Progress CEO Yogesh Gupta have a conversation about where Progress is in their progress toward DevOps and moving beyond. So great conversation that they have. After that, we have a repeat episode of a Devops Unbound panel that includes Gerta Shinganaku, I believe it is, of Tricentis, Rosalind Radcliffe of IBM, and Sam Knutson of CompuWare. They join Ashley interview on application modernization, DevOps, and the mainframe. Definitely an interesting conversation. So nice, we ran it twice. Okay, after that, I come on with the news headlines for the day, and then I have a great conversation with a gentleman by the name of Guillermo Rauch from a company called Vercel. They just came off their second round of funding. It was announced on December 5th, and Rauch and I kind of talk about what's happening in the Next.js framework space. Rauch actually developed that, and that's for front-end development, which is definitely an area that a lot more organizations are focusing on in the year ahead. And Next.js has really exploded in popularity. So we're going to have a conversation about what's next for Next.js, and really how it's become so much more popular since the onset of the pandemic and moving forward. So great conversation that he and I have. I also give you a preview of some of the webinars that we have coming up on the sites. And then after that, Mitch Ashley comes on with a conversation that he has with Jyoti Bansal, who is the CEO and co-founder of Traceable.ai. They talk about some of the security issues in modern software architectures and how taking a software perspective on security complements a lot of the existing security capabilities of many organizations. So definitely an interview worth checking out, especially if security is top of mind for your organization, and really, when is it not top of mind? All right, we've got lots coming up on today's episode, lots of great stuff, so please stay with us. We'll be back right after this commercial break. All right. First up, we've got a conversation between Alan and Ariel Asaraf at Corelogics. So let's give this one a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us on another episode for TechStrong TV. This is our, we just came out of New Year's and we are just kind of figuring out where things are and what's happening as we start the new year. And I invited our next guest on to talk a little bit about the observability marketplace, what's going on there. Welcome, Ariel Asaraf, CEO, founder of Corelogics. Ariel, how are you, man?
Good, Alan. Great being here again.
Great to have you here. Happy New Year. So Ariel, you've been on the show before, and I think our audience is at least somewhat familiar with Corelogics, but just in case, why don't we start there? A little background on Corelogics.
Yeah. So Corelogics is an observability company. We started at the log analytics space, added machine learning capabilities, and later grew into log security matrix product that gives a full platform for multi-cloud environments or hybrid environments, and developed a model that allows us to run all the analytics, alerting, and anomaly detection in real time without the use of storage.
Excellent. Cool. And, look, as bad as 2020 was on so many fronts, right? For many of us in the tech world, from a business point of view, it was a good year, right? Because companies, undergoing digital transformation, accelerating digital transformation, moving to the cloud, all of these things, adopting DevOps as part of their remote works, a DevOps kind of mindset and SRE and this and SaaS. For a company like Corelogics, you'd say, yeah, no, you were probably in the right place at the right time with it.
Well, it's certainly an interesting year, yes. I think the first 3 months of COVID were kind of a shock for all the world. So if we're looking at like March, April, May, everything was stagnant. Companies were waiting to see what's happening. And then we've seen a major burst of companies, realizing, understanding, all right, this is not a phase of a couple of months. We need to change. And then we saw companies looking to do accelerate their digital transformation to move more workloads to the cloud, and obviously get better observability into their production, get better observability into their monitoring, into their security with all the remote work. And there's a lot of collaboration that needs to be done. There's an infinite need for data processing and for securing environments. And for us, it's been a very, strong 2 quarters, third and fourth. And we've even raised our B round at $25 million round, led by 2 strong VCs here in Israel that allowed us to really accelerate growth. So I think, if you look at the B2B SaaS observability / security markets, I think a lot of companies really gained from this crisis, which is, I haven't seen a startup saying we haven't gained from the crisis, but we're definitely one of them.
Yeah. No, we, you don't want to shout it from the rooftops because, there's plenty of people suffering, obviously, but it's true. So you mentioned you guys did your B round. It was 25. And if we look back on 2020, what were the kind of 2 or 3 highlights? So that would certainly be one. But what were some of the other big news that you guys had over the year?
Yeah, so the first one that we started the year with was that we've entered the security market with a product that allows our customers to secure their cloud environments within minutes, which really fitted the need of, a lot of companies realizing that they need to do that ASAP. And we're seeing what's happening now with SolarWinds, Orion, and other attacks, specifically also, by the way, here in Israel, a couple insurance companies and others that got hacked. So the ability to secure an environment within minutes and tie that up to the deployment. So every new service, every new resources automatically secured and monitored is something that really boosted throughout the past couple of quarters. And we developed a technology that, by the way, it's also kind of related to the crisis that we've seen in a lot of other companies, is that companies became much more budget aware. And then we allowed a lot of our customers and new companies that work with us these days to basically look at data differently and understand that not all logs are born equally, and there are important and less important and not important at all logs, and then prioritize them in Corelogics. And our ability to, if until today the world relied on ingest, index data, and then analyze it, we kind of reverted that paradigm and we say ingest, analyze first, and then only ingest what matters. So that ability to do all the anomaly detection, alerting, statistics in real time basically gave our customers the option to reduce 70% of their costs. So we managed to grow very nicely this year and meet our targets, even though a lot of our existing customers utilize this to reduce costs. We had a few conversations about this before we launched. Do we go with our existing customers, or do we not let them know or push this new narrative? We decided to take the Amazon path that says we will reward our salespeople on down sales if they come from actual technology breakthrough that we offer our customers. So that's been, I think these are the main highlights, the funding round, the security product, and what we call Streama, the real-time streaming analytics.
Sure. And look, funding is funding, and congratulations on raising the money. A lot of companies raised money this year, right? Crazy amounts, crazy valuations. But really, so in my mind, and we were talking a little bit off camera about, you go to market as being a price point differential, better technology, and, competing on price is never alone, by itself is never, in my mind, a winning strategy. Another thing that, I was taught and learned is that in any given market, there's basically three winners, right? The first to liquidity event has a great return. The second one has a pretty damn good return too. The third one's okay. After that, you really start seeing that trend down, right? Now, with Corelogics, this streamer technology is what you called it, right? This is real, kind of game changing for folks. And I want to emphasize that for our audience. I mean, really what we're talking about is, so much of the cost of maintaining logs and analyzing logs and going through this data is the storage of these logs, right? Even though storage is cheap, and I've seen some, log management or storage, not log, it's not storage, but log analysis companies compete quickly. We store your logs cheaper than anyone. The fact that you don't have to store it, or only store what you really need, not the unnecessary, I think it's 70% of probably what you don't need, is really the special sauce here.
It gives a lot of benefits. I definitely connect to what you're saying, that price alone is not, we wouldn't have created this because of price alone. What we've done is basically we've re-engineered Lucene, the back end of Elasticsearch, and made it a real-time technology that runs on Kafka streams. We've done all that effort for, I think it's like 15 years of men work to get there, not just to reduce price, but it also removes the constraints that you have when you need to store data, because there are structures of data that you need to store, and then all your algorithms and all the alerting have to comply with that structure of data. If it's Elasticsearch, it's mapping or max query time frame and other retention of data. So for instance, today we know how to offer alerts that look at a year back, or visualizations for a year time, because we don't use the storage, and it doesn't have to match your retention period on data. It gives you real-time insights, because we don't need to wait for the data to get ingested into the storage to run our analytics on that. so there's no lag. When we say real-time alerts, we mean that very second that an event happened, and not 5 minutes after. And the cost is just one of the other things that we offer them. And what that gives customers is more than the reduction of the cost. We don't see customers reducing their spend. If there's a budget for observability and security, it's an important part of your IT organization. You don't just cut that budget, you just get more coverage. So you start saying, okay, so if I can analyze 5 petabytes of data instead of 2, what do I do with that? Do I add also the access logs, audit logs? Do I collect server logs, network logs? Suddenly, companies are finally getting that option of full observability of ask anything, not only ask what you chose to cover.
Yeah, I mean that's really the key. It's not that they're spending less money on their log analysis. It's allowing them greater coverage, because you're right, many companies would have to make difficult choices about what was more important, right? They couldn't afford to log everything, couldn't afford to analyze everything. And so they'd have to make choices. And now you go ahead.
We actually learned an interesting story with one of our bigger customers in India. It's one of the biggest communication companies in India, one of the biggest media companies in India. We came there and there was a competitor that they were using, and they stored 100 gigabytes per day. So we said, hey guys, you're paying $4,000 a month for 100 gigs. We can do that at 1,500 with our Streama technology. And they said, not interesting. We have money. For us, 30,000 a year is nothing. It's not interesting enough. But then one of the engineers there said, wait, but if you can do that at 1,500, can you do a terabyte at 15,000? And we said, basically, yes. And he said, okay, so that's the constraint that I have, because for 4,000 for 100 gig, I just couldn't scale this and ask my organization to pay 40,000 a month. So now it makes sense. And suddenly that organization discovered 900 gigabytes per day that they were basically uncovered. And they get insights from that, and that impacts business. Suddenly, business decision makers generate reports. Suddenly, they have cloud security in that. Suddenly, their machine learning analysts actually use Corelogics to pre-process data so they can make business decisions. And these were things that companies were reluctant to do just because of how uncontrollably they were dragged with monitoring and part of their cloud bills. And another point of view to that is that you look at a company like ours, we're a cloud company. All our cost of goods is our cloud bill and our tooling, right? So my business KPIs are directly affected by the tools that I pay for in my cloud. And if you think of a startup, if I can reduce monitoring spend or increase coverage or get you for full coverage and compliance at a third of the cost of my competitor, that means not only you're spending less, but your business KPIs, your gross margin is better. And the difference for a startup like me, having 25% or 75% or 85% gross margin, they can be in tens of millions in valuation. So that's already a real business driver. And that's what we've learned throughout time. When we came out with that, it came from technology first. Hey, we can do that in real time. Why store? It's old school way of doing analytics. But then we started discovering more and more use cases with customers, and we've almost doubled the company within 4 months ever since we've launched this new product.
That's amazing. Amazing. Congratulations on that. So Ariel, so now we're here in January of 2021. What do you look ahead? I mean, who could look ahead? If I would have asked you in January of 2020, you wouldn't have told me about COVID.
I would give you 3 years predictions there, but now I'm not.
Yeah. Let's not do that. But what do you, short term, what do you think this means? Will we see just people logging and analyzing a lot more data than they ever did before? What does it mean for the market?
So I think two trends that we're seeing. One, the movement to the cloud is not absolute. Companies still have a few environments. The movement to work from home is here to stay. A lot of people are going to remain working remotely. The companies that move to the cloud or born in the cloud are starting to look at multi-clouds. So suddenly you have a lot of distributed systems in a lot of places with a lot of people connecting to them from a lot of places. And there's just more data to analyze, more data points to analyze, and more risks to manage and prevent. And so the need for data collection, smart analysis, and we haven't mentioned our dynamic alerting and anomaly detection, but these are things that many companies do. These are needs that are going to increase, and it's not just us. You look at other companies in the market. You look at Datadog in their reports and Elasticsearch in their reports. These companies are growing 80-90% year over year at a pace of $600-700 million a year. The market is growing really, really nicely, and the need for data and data analytics is just expanding. So we've crossed the phase of big data. How do we store it even? And then we've crossed the phase of machine learning. Hey, let's make something of that data. And we see now the new generation of how do we apply those algorithms without having to deal with the big data infrastructure and storage. This is what we're trying to lead, and this is the approach that we've taken.
Can't argue with you, man. Can't argue with you at all. Ariel, we're just about out of time, though. You know what we didn't tell people? They want to find out more about Corelogics. Where are they going?
Go to Corelogics.com. And one of the things that we're very proud of is that Corelogics.com, at the bottom, there's a chat bubble. And we have 24/7 people there that answer within less than 2 minutes. Not only questions about Corelogics, anything you want to ask about observability or a tech log or Kafka or Elastic or anything else, just ask and you'll get a professional response. So that's where you.
That's really cool. Hey, do me a favor, spell out Corelogics for people.
Yeah, it's Corelogics.com.
Yeah, yep. I wanted to make sure they got that. It wasn't Corelogics, C-O-R-E. That's not right. It's Corelogics, C-O-R-A.
Yes.
All right. Before one last thing, how are things in Tel Aviv?
In and out of lockdowns, like the rest of the world, I guess. We're now on the very verge of another one. But the good news is that they started to vaccinate the entire population, and they think that by end of February, they'll end the vaccination project and we can go to normal life unless there's a new virus that people are talking about now. So yeah.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not.
Big predictions, exactly.
Yep. Hey, good luck, man. I hope so. I'm hoping, well, here in the US, we can't get our act together, but we're hoping to have, I think, most of the population vaccinated by the end of June. And, maybe I'll be in Israel by next fall. We'll see. We'll come visit.
Sure.
But anyway, hey, man, good luck, Ariel. Thanks for coming on. We'll see you soon. All right.
Yeah.
Good luck with Corelogics.
Thank you.
Ariel Asraf, CEO, founder, Corelogics, here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel. We'll be right back with our next guest.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Next up, we have an interview between Alan and Dan Coburn from Paperspace. They're going to be talking about ML Ops and where it is headed. So take a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everyone. It's Alan Schimmel. Thanks for joining us on another TechStrong TV segment here, starting off the new year. Our guest right now is Dan Cobran. Dan is COO over at Paperspace. Hey, Dan, welcome to TechStrong TV. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. Thanks so much for having me.
Not a problem. So, Dan, we've interviewed folks from Paperspace on TechStrong TV, but I'm not going to pretend that our audience is intimately familiar with Paperspace. So why don't we start there? Why don't we give them a little Paperspace background, maybe a little background on yourself?
Sure thing. Yeah. So Paperspace is a platform where developers create and deploy accelerated applications. So the way we think of that is really sort of next-gen applications, typically backed by GPUs, which have become a lot more common these days, with specific audiences or use cases in machine learning. So we machine learning has really become the sort of killer app for what we've been building over the last 5 years or so, and so we kind of have one foot in the scientific computing, high performance computing space, as well as this more modern sort of variant of that, where companies are deploying really advanced applications in the autonomous space. Everything from recommender systems to anomaly detection. Really interesting sort of modern AI applications.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up the AI word. I think one of the 2020 was a crappy year for a lot of reasons. But I think one of the things that I saw really take place in 2020 is that people really began to understand the difference between machine learning and AI, right? To a large extent, there's so many aspects of AI that are sort of Jetson-like and out there, right? And we see, Google and Microsoft and IBM and all these people have AI engines that are, trying to solve really, really big problems in the world, right? Like existential kind of stuff. But on the other hand, the machine learning space got real to a certain, in many areas, especially in technology, especially, in computing, where we've learned to, I think there was always some machine learning, pattern recognition and stuff like that. But we've really taken machine learning to a new level where it's real and it helps, and apps and companies that are using it are seeing distinct advantages. So when we look back on 2020, I think this is a year that machine learning really did come of age a little bit. No?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's two polarities. You have the sort of outsider perspective, which is really dominated by, the media hype around what, AI is and all that. And then you have this sort of insider perspective, like working in the industry and seeing all the incredible things that are actually happening. And it's hard to sort of balance those two polarities. So for us, I think 2020 was a huge year where I would say that, it really kind of materialized in a way. Like some of the more extreme, the consumer version of the super intelligence, all of that stuff is probably not going to happen as quickly as we thought. But at the other end, you have companies deploying real applications, making huge investments in machine learning to solve real problems around practically, honestly, every industry. I mean, we are not industry or vertical focused. We are industry agnostic. So we see applications across, almost every industry out there. And there's some really incredible things happening that were just, not possible a few years ago. Some examples would be obviously the autonomous vehicle stuff. Those are the more obvious ones. But in the healthcare space, you're seeing, cancer diagnosis happening in a more, accurate way than even a radiologist can predict in terms of diagnosing cancerous tumors and whatnot on medical imagery. Stuff like that is moving very, very quickly and is very real. It's very tangible. And so, I would say 2020 has been really positive in that way, where not all of the hype played out in a way that some folks had predicted, but in a way that is really tangible and really impactful. So we're obviously very excited I think in a good way, maybe some of the media hype will die off a little bit, so we can just focus on the work that needs to get done and not have all the pressure of building super intelligence.
Right. I forgot what that's called. The movie where, the AI in the sky is going to decide to do away with humanity. But so an interesting thing you brought up is, at Paperspace, you really don't focus on any particular vertical. I mean, obviously science, technology is important, and I would imagine there's a lot of use case there. But let's talk a little bit about go-to-market. How do you go to market in a company where you don't have a particular vertical focus? Right?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we get asked that a lot. Yeah, so I think that there's a common denominator across every company that's applying this kind of technology, which kind of ties everything together. So the way in which they develop these models, even across wildly different industries, is really the same approach. So they're using a lot of the same tools. They have the same sort of data pipeline or machine learning pipeline that they're developing and deploying. And so that's kind of what ties it together. So, if you're, in the healthcare industry, or you're in the, in your Netflix, the way in which you develop these models is almost identical in a lot of ways. You're pulling in data. It might be slightly different kinds of data, but a platform like ours has to support different types of either streaming data or static data sets. You're training and we're sort of refining those same kinds of models over time, and then you're ultimately putting them into production, deploying them as an endpoint to make some sort of prediction. And so that platform that allows these companies to build out these applications is really the same, and they're hiring the same kind of folks that have expertise, in neural nets today. This is sort of the new innovation in machine learning, deep learning specifically, and so they're hiring a lot of the same folks that have background in stats and neural networks, and typically with some of the machine learning frameworks that have emerged over the last few years around like TensorFlow, PyTorch are some of the two most common. And so the similarities are really in how the models are developed. MLOps has become this sort of term that defines that philosophy or discipline within a company. And so MLOps is a practice that you'll see emerge at companies that operate in totally different industries. And that kind of ties it all together from our perspective. In a similar way that the way software is developed, DevOps occurs at a company is very similar across wild.
Eating the world. Well, what we really saw in 2020 is digital transformation is transforming the world. But digital transformation is driven by software, right?
Right.
And software today is done for the most part via DevOps. Whether you're using a cloud-native cloud infrastructure or you're back on a mainframe or what have you, you're still doing agile DevOps, lean kind of things to speed up and automate your software deployment. And, when we talk about operations, post-deployment, as well as at time of deployment and everything else, it's that same sort of those same drivers. And so at its heart, that's what's driving the machine learning, right? The ability to automate, the ability to go faster, the ability to have quicker, faster, cheaper insights, right? Into what's going on and being able to fix it, or act from a place of intelligence, of knowledge. That's what's driving this whole thing, right? And 2020 was crazy with COVID and all we've had to live through, and we are still living through it. But these improvements that we've made, this way that we're operating now, including the rise of MLOps, that doesn't go away, right? It doesn't go back in the box. It doesn't, right? We're only going to continue accelerating from here.
Absolutely, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, you go ahead.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I think it was, I might have this wrong, but I think it was Jeff Dean, the head of Google Brain, who had said, machine learning will replace every heuristic in your business, which I thought was a really sort of succinct way of describing what, sort of machine learning is all about. If you bring the some form of intelligence to the table in terms of being able to solve problems that were otherwise not possible, where it required some sort of gut or intelligent sort of insight into the problem. Machine learning can plug in there and really become incredibly valuable. And yeah, I think MLOps is really interesting because what we're seeing is a really similar, I would say, parallel to, machine learning is kind of reminiscent of software development in the 1990s, where you have everything is really a mess. There's no automation, like all the things you just touched on. And that is still the case for machine learning today, which is it's a little bit ironic because machine learning is one of the most advanced technologies in the world, but the way it's practiced is like really kind of eerily similar to, a very archaic way of developing software. Just because there's probably a few different reasons for that, but one of them that stands out is the people coming into the space have a research background and they're not as well, they're not accustomed to the modern DevOps methodology or agile methodology that you just mentioned, and so it's not innate and it doesn't come naturally, and so they have to kind of learn these ways of working, this methodology. And so what we're trying to do is kind of give them a platform where they can just plug in and spend all of their time actually developing models. You see, you've probably heard numbers like 75% of machine learning engineers' time is spent on infrastructure and tooling, and only 25% on developing models. That is very real. Like when you talk to, get into some of these companies, that is the status quo. And so that's the big pain point so we're trying to solve, many other companies are trying to solve, bring that DevOps methodology to the machine learning practice at these companies that are making these investments to, really enable them to be productive and see, value from their investments in machine learning.
Absolutely. Do you think it's an upskilling issue with people, or is it purely technology?
It's a good question. I don't know. Like I think that, and our core belief at Paperspace, and I'm not sure if Dylan kind of touched on this in his last interview, CEO, but our philosophy is that machine learning has to get closer to the software teams at these companies and not become just a research project that kind of lives outside the norms of, the DevOps and the software development. And so, what we're trying to do is really kind of move up the stack and try to simplify, the process of developing these models such that a software engineer can kind of plug in and build out their own models without, deep expertise in machine learning, PhD, that kind of thing. And so that's our belief. There's very, a lot of different directions you can kind of go with this technology in terms of, I hate using the word democratizing it, but that is one way of thinking about it and making it more accessible to these companies. And so the way we think about accomplishing that is by making it available to the software teams, because software teams are very mature at these companies. They have a huge investment in terms of the resources at these companies, and so making a stack like this available to traditional software developers could be really, really powerful, and that's really what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that could be the future. A lot of different directions. I would say 2 to 5 years from now, we'll see if that approach is the right one. It could go the other way, which it becomes even more specialized than it is today. I think the problem with that is that it needs to modernize if that is the case, and it can't just become this research-driven practice. It really does need to adopt modern software development practices at some level.
Got it. Let's talk specifically about Paperchase now, though. So as we zoom in here to 2021, any technology-wise, what do you see coming down the pipe that'll make the product even better?
One thing that's been really on our radar for a long time that is very relevant to the world of machine learning is these new AI chips that are coming out of the market for the first time. So that's a really exciting thing. This has been going on for several years. You've seen a lot of companies formed over the past 5 or so years in the chip space, which is exciting because the chip market has been really stagnant for a long time. And so we're excited about some of those chips becoming accessible to our community of developers for the first time in 2021. A few of them actually did land towards the end of 2020. One of them Habana is an Intel investment. They just became accessible for the first time on the market. But there are so many more that are coming that still are not commercialized yet, and we're really excited about the impact that will have. Obviously GPUs have been incredibly powerful in terms of being the sort of backbone of all of machine learning today. Pretty much, almost 100% of machine learning happens on, in terms of the training side, at least on NVIDIA GPUs. And so, we're excited to see other kind of players come in the space and all the specialized silicon that will have, leaps and bounds in terms of performance improvements over some of the existing technology that exists today. So I would say that is probably one of the more exciting things. And I guess also just some really interesting investments happening on the algorithm side. Every year, you'll see like 5 or 10 major advancements on the algorithm side, over the past few years. And so Google just announced they've moved almost 100% of their translation service over to their NLP model. I think it's called BERT. They have a few different ones. That is astounding that, you can replace all of this rule-based, like rat's nest of code in terms of doing translation with just a really simplistic, deep learning model that just is incredibly intelligent. And so, a lot of exciting stuff is happening on the algorithm side as well that should really, lead to some pretty incredible innovation.
Sounds almost Star Trek-y, right? But, it's interesting times. Anyway, Dan, we're about out of time. Speaking of time, I want to thank you for joining us. You know what? We didn't mention Paperspace. It's paperspace.com or paperspace.io. I don't remember.
So it used to be .io when we got the .com a few years ago. So paperspace.com.
You got it. Yeah. Perfect, man. Paperspace.com. Go check it out. You want to stay up on ML ops and what's going on there. These, really, really leading technology stuff. Congratulations, Dan. Thanks for being on TechStrong TV with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
All right. Good luck in 2021. Good. Okay. Dan Coburn, COO Paperspace here on TechStrong TV. We'll be right back with our next guest.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind Devops.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Next up, we have another interview with Alan, who is speaking with Yogesh Gupta, CEO of Progress Software, talking about progress is progress. So let's give it a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us on another segment here for TechStrong TV. My guest this segment is Yogesh Gupta. Yogesh is the CEO of Progress Software. Yogesh, welcome to TechStrong TV and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, Alan. Wonderful to be here.
Yes, it's wonderful to be in 2021. I cannot wait to put 2020 as far into our rearview mirror as we possibly can.
I would second that.
Yeah, it was an unusual year in many, many ways. Anyway, Yogesh, our audience, as we were talking off camera, our audience, it's really a digital transformation audience, developers, DevOps, cybersecurity, cloud native folks. It's a technical audience, and they know Progress Software. Right? They've heard of Progress Software. Of course, 2020 was also the year Progress Software acquired Chef, kind of one of the DevOps darlings, if you will, for our DevOps audience. But Progress is so much more than Chef, certainly. So I'm not downplaying Chef. I don't mean for any of my Chef fans out there, I didn't mean to say anything bad. But there's a lot more to Progress than Chef. Why don't we start there, if you don't mind? Give people, who is and what is Progress Software?
So thank you, Alan. You're absolutely right. We did acquire Chef, and I'm really excited about that. Probably the one good thing for us in 2020, at least from a Progress perspective. But really, Progress has been all along in this whole one ecosystem that says, how do we provide the best products to help our users build, deploy, and manage, the most modern and impactful business systems that they can. And really, when you think about it, it's the whole cycle of develop, deploy, and manage that Progress has covered. And Alan, one of the little known facts about Progress is that there are more than 1,700 software companies who embed our products inside theirs or build their product on top of ours. They range from ERP vendors to BI analytics vendors to, just all kinds of companies. You name a large software company or a small software company, most likely it uses Progress Software for its products, right? Whether it is a Microsoft or a Google or an Oracle or an SAP or an IBM or a whole host of them. So we really are key to this whole cycle. And our approach has been very straightforward. And it's actually unique, I think, in the industry. Our approach is that we want to make sure that designers, the folks that actually do the creative on the experience, the developers who actually make it all work, and really the developer is sort of the primary central audience for our products. The ops folks, the IT operations, make sure that it runs well, right? The data analytics folks that basically are going, and data scientists who both analyze the information for internal business use, as well as to actually create the AI ML capabilities for the applications themselves to be smart and do the right thing. And last but not least, security, right? SecOps, right? So the whole ecosystem, how do we bring this whole ecosystem together? And that has been the thrust for Progress over the years. So we have everything from IT ops management systems, availability, performance, network management. We have amazing front-end development products for building the most wonderful, engaging user experiences, whether they are on the web or on mobile devices or chat, and now AR, VR. Tying design efforts to those developer efforts, tying those developer efforts to back-end development systems. We offer cloud platforms. We offer intelligent cloud technologies that work both on the edge and in the cloud. So sometimes you want intelligence at the edge so that you can scale and be responsive. Sometimes you want it running back in the cloud. We do both. And the whole business logic runs both on-prem and in the cloud. And now with Chef, we actually have one of the leading technologies and offerings for DevOps and DevSecOps. And I think this, to me, is really exciting because I think as we move forward, the whole field of continuous compliance is going to really force this whole DevOps, DevSecOps thing to come together. Before Christmas, we had the wonderful incidents around security. I think every now and then, we find a new security incident shows up and we all get excited and go, well, how are we going to deal with it? We've been having serious security incidents for a long time. And I think the ability to have a system that can, first of all, help you and a provider backing that system, a company like Progress, that can provide all the information that is needed about what is the best policy and practices to enforce for compliance, and then have a system that basically allows you to change and accept those or define your own nuanced things for your business, deploy them and make sure that they are continuously monitored so that whenever something goes off compliance, there's automatic remediation and then reporting an audit. All those things have to come together for DevSecOps to be successful. So to me, that is such an essential piece of what we do, and Chef brings that capability to us, and it ties together all of our other products, whether it is in the area of development on the front end side, development on the back end side, as well as IT operations and availability and performance monitoring. So it is an exciting time to be in this field, Alan. And I'm really proud of what we're doing here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It is an exciting time. I felt this way for the last 2-3 years. We're living in a golden age right now where software is driving the world. Digital transformation is the main driver of what so many companies are trying to do. And certainly 2020, with all the bad that it brought, also brought a tremendous acceleration.
Yes, it did.
Companies recognizing, if you didn't go digital, if you didn't, if you're not transforming your business in a digital way, being able to conduct business online, you're done. I mean,
That's right.
That's right.
And sorry, just to take off on that, one of the points is that to go digital, right, means that you have to take assets you have, which quite often are on-prem, and modernize them and enable them for the cloud and do some new stuff on the cloud. So this whole notion of how do you deal with multi-cloud, hybrid cloud and on-prem environments, connect everything together, make it engaging, make it exciting. I mean, the end user has become the most powerful thing. Right? In business, people used to think that, I sell to business, I sell to the business folks, I go and sell to the C-level people. No, it's the business buyer. The end user now decides, you know what? I like this tool because it makes my job easy on a day-to-day basis. And so the developers have to focus on the design and the usability of from all the way from that to smarts, intelligence, tying it together. The job of the developer is the most exciting and the most challenging today. and the two go hand in hand.
Yeah. I mean, and quite frankly, that end user, it's not necessarily the customer of your customer, right?
Correct.
It truly is the person who's using your development tool, the person who's using your security tool. So I remember so every year at the end of January, we do a virtual event called Predict, a conference, and Predict 2021 is coming up January 21st. But for January of 2020, I didn't predict a pandemic, but I did predict something called, if I only, this is why I still work for a living. But, I did predict what I called the democratization of IT, which is the builders shall inherit the earth, right? The builders, the users. You're right. I don't know about progress, but I see it in so many tech and software companies. They're not putting big money into hiring, the enterprise sales reps that I hired when I was founding companies years ago, right? Those enterprise sales guys are expensive with long sales cycles, and that's not who the buyer is today.
Correct.
Today, it's a much more technical buyer who goes to his manager, who, by the way, has a pick of jobs, right? These people, you can't pay them enough money, right? They work based on, they want to be in a good environment with good tools, with a good team, and they'll get good money.
That's right.
So they're the ones who are making a lot of the choices on tools and software components and so forth.
Exactly.
So for progress, that has to be a huge kind of business model change, right?
It is to some degree. It is to some degree, Alan, but not. I mean, one of the things that we recognized a while back is that my audience is that developer, right? And my user is the developer. If I keep them happy, right, the business folks will follow. So we've actually, so I'll give you a couple of interesting examples. We actually have a very large inside sales operations and have had it, both online transactions, completely zero touch. Developers come online and they kind of say, hey, you know what? This tool is something that I can actually put it on my own credit card for myself. Right? Or this tool is such that my group can buy, and it's my boss can sign off. It's a $10,000 a year subscription. It's not a $1 million deal, right? So we do a very, very large number of sub $50,000 transactions, right? And so we've had a significant sort of a high velocity sales model and online sales and engagement. We also have had enterprise sales, and that enterprise sales is changing as well. I mean, even the big ticket, like you said, right? The decision maker is now down technical. The decision maker is very much the person who's going to use the product and say, does this solve my problem the way I want it, and solves it for me, it makes my life easy, right? And then they basically go to their boss and say, we should get this. So Chef is a great example of that, right? If you think about it, we have a very large open source community. People get used to the tool through the open source capability versions that are out there and capabilities. And then they go, you know what? We want the backing of a software company. We want the distributions that are certified by somebody like Chef/Progress. We want all the content that's going to come with that when we get it from somebody like Progress. And so it is actually yet another business model for Progress. So there's the one business model change you were talking about is selling to the enterprise versus selling to developers. The other is this whole open source community, and how do you leverage that for your sales? And we have phenomenal products that are available for developers at no cost. I'll give you an example. Fiddler. Fiddler is the #1 testing product for web performance and web applications. Any developer who wants to debug the performance of a web service or a web application uses Fiddler. It's a Progress product. It's a free download. We have versions of it that people pay a small subscription fee for to do teaming and groupware. But so I look at this as it is a different world. And it is definitely a different world than what it was when I started in the industry. It is very much different world than even it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago or 5 years ago. And I think what is changing is, like you said, the user, the user. And so for the developers, the end user is the end user. For us, the developers are the end user.
The end user.
Yeah.
Perfect. You know what, Yogesh, we didn't really talk about Chef at all, though. And so I just want to spend a few moments, if we can. Give us an update. What's happening there? I know integration continues, development continues.
Yeah.
What's coming down the pike here, 2021 now?
I think that, as you said, of course, integration is going well. Development is going really, really well. We are continuing to focus on, really, as I said, I think compliance is such a big area, and this whole DevSecOps is such an opportunity. That is where we're putting tremendous amount of effort. Of course, all parts of the products are being worked on, but we see a tremendous need in the market for continuous compliance, DevSecOps, and then tying it into everything else. So I am really excited about Chef. I mean, it is a wonderful business, great people, an amazing open source community around it that is passionate, and we love that passion, and we love continuing to work with them the way we've always worked with them, and the way Chef has always worked with them. And so I am really excited, Alan. We'll share more news as news becomes available from our side, but we are truly happy to have the Chef community on board, the Chef employees on board, and the Chef customers on board.
I absolutely. Okay, so that's for our Chef friends out there. That's the update there. We'll have more news soon. Yogesh, I wanted to return back to Progress, though, as a whole, right? I mean, when you look at the full spectrum of what Progress is helping, all the different, like, for instance, how many different, I'm sure you would know, I don't, how many different products are there in the Progress portfolio?
Yeah, so I mean, if you count them in sort of broad chunks, because quite often people look at a product and they kind of say, oh, Chef is 5 different products, right? So you can actually, things get sliced. But if you think about it in broad chunks, we have what I would call about 8 or so major products, right? We have on the front-end development tools, we have Kendo UI for the JavaScript world and Telerik dev tools for the .NET world. And both those worlds are thriving. People are building front ends on both using the .NET frameworks. With Blazor, by the way, Microsoft has done a really good job. We are the industry leading, and we have more components available for Blazor than anybody else. So we continue to move both on the .NET world forward and on the JavaScript world forward on the front end side. So those are 2 major products there. On the backend platform, we have OpenEdge, which is a cloud-enabled platform. It's also a database. It's also a business language platform where all the logic runs. As I said, just on that platform, I have over 1,500 large software companies that have built ERP applications and so on, modern cloud stuff. And as well as legacy stuff. So OpenEdge is one of our larger products. We have the world's premier data connectivity that is used for, and that's called Data Direct, and that is used to tie any front end or any analytics product to any other data source in the back end. So you can connect an application to data sources. You can connect BI tools and analytics tools to any data source, and those data sources can be as varied as Snowflake and other modern databases, to traditional cloud applications like Salesforce and others, to DevOps systems like Jira and so on. You can connect to those, and to traditional data like IBM DB2 databases on the mainframe. I mean, really, really industry-leading data direct data integration technology. We have a business rules engine that has both an edge version for JavaScript to run on end devices, as well as a server-centric version. Millisecond response times to apply business rules to figure out whether something is right or wrong. More than half of healthcare exchanges in the US use that to implement the healthcare exchange policies, the ACA exchanges. So, a very, very wonderful tool for business logic from a rules-based business system, so that business folks can just define the rules and nobody has to write code. So those are some of the development side. And then, of course, you get to Chef for DevOps. And then you get to two other products. One is called Move It, and one is called What's Up Gold. Move It is all about secure data movement, secure data file transfer, secure data movement, reliably, auditably, and so on. And What's Up Gold is the industry leader among the small to mid-sized businesses when it comes to running IT environments, monitoring networks, monitoring systems, making sure availability, performance. So broad portfolio, those are the major products. You're right, Alan. It is a fun portfolio, and we're happy to serve our customers. We have our own direct customers who are these development companies who have developers or companies who have IT folks. Is already in the tens of thousands. We have, but when you look beyond that, the applications that are built on top of our products, and then they are sold by other companies, it's hundreds of thousands of companies. So we're a very broad ecosystem. 3 million developers. 3 million developers touch our products on a regular basis.
That's impressive, man. Congratulations.
Thank you, Alan. It is a wonderful company, and I'm proud to be here.
Absolutely. Yogesh, we're about out of time. I want to thank you for joining us. I want to wish you nothing but good luck and success in 2021 health. And come back and join us. Come back and give us updates. Keep us posted, not just on Chef, on everything progress.
Will do, Alan. And all the best to you for 2021 as well. And thank you for having me here. It is a pleasure. And talk to you soon.
All righty. Yogesh Gupta, CEO of Progress Software, giving us an update on progress and what's going on at Chef and et cetera. This is Alan Schimmel. We'll be right back on TechStrong TV with another guest in just a moment.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Next up, we have an encore episode of Devops Unbound that features Gerda Sheganaku of Tricentis, Rosalind Radcliffe of IBM, and Sam Knutson of CompuWare. They talk with Mitch and Alan about application modernization at DevOps and the mainframe. Great stuff coming up, so give this one a listen.
Hey everyone, this is Alan Schimmel. Welcome to another episode of DevOps Unbound. This is episode 4 of DevOps Unbound, and then we've also done 2 DevOps Unbound roundtables. So this is actually the 6th DevOps Unbound event that we're presenting, and they've all been great, and I think this one is going to be as good or better than any of them. Today's topic is app modernization and mainframes, along with DevOps. Of course, it's DevOps Unbound. We've got a great panel lined up for you. Let me introduce you. First of all, we have Sam Knutson, and Sam is the product manager for mainframe and agile DevOps at CompuWare, a BMC company. Sam, did I get that right?
Pretty much, Alan.
Correct me. Get it right for the record.
So I lead product management at CompuWare. We are a BMC company, and we are focused on enabling Agile and DevOps on the IBM z/OS platform.
Fantastic. And the lesson I've learned here is I'll let each of you introduce yourselves. My next guest is the one and only Rosalind Radcliffe. If you want to know about DevOps and mainframes, there's no better person in the world to go to. Rosalind, welcome, and why don't you give them a little bit of your your title and background.
Thank you. Glad to be here again. Rosalind Radcliffe, IBM Distinguished Engineer responsible for DevOps for Enterprise Systems. So I help clients with their transformation to DevOps for z/OS applications, as well as application modernization and bringing z/OS into the rest of the world so you can do your cloud native development for z/OS as well.
Excellent. Then we have, I'm going to do my best here, Gerda Sheganaku of Tricentis. Gerda, how bad was that?
Thank you, Alan. That was perfect, really.
Okay. So Gerda, your background and title?
So I'm with Tricentis, as you said. I have initially started at Tricentis in the customer experience space, where I was leading our customers through their digital transformation journeys, really helping them understand how they can enable testing as a catalyst to really get DevOps working. And then I have moved into the product organization, where I'm currently leading a team where we're releasing our first AI-based test automation solution, which is really about tackling the problems that we see out there, especially when it comes to app modernization and testing of old applications and new applications, and really making testing easier.
Excellent. And then last but not least is my sidekick, partner in crime, Mitchell Ashley, CEO of Accelerated Strategies Group, and also my co-host here on DevOps Unbound. Mitchell, good to see you.
Good to join you.
All right. So guys, today's topic is app modernization, mainframe, and DevOps. It's interesting. I've been watching I've been kind of binging on Netflix, that AMC show, Catch Fire, and I forget the name of it now. Anyone else watch this show? It's an AMC on Netflix.
Halt and Catch Fire?
Halt and Catch Fire. You've watched it, Sam?
I'm familiar with the instruction. I've seen the previews for the show.
It's a pretty good show once you get into it. So the company that started in Texas bets everything because they're tired of paying the timeshare people, and they buy an IBM 3030, and that's based in Daly, San Francisco, or Daly, California, near San Francisco. And they literally have to move the whole company to where the mainframe is, versus moving the mainframe to where the company is. Well, it's TV. But but that was the late 80s, right? And we don't live in those worlds anymore. Mainframe applications are running on your phone, right? At least the front ends of them are on your tablets, on your computers. The mainframe doesn't necessarily fill up. This was a whole basement that was one mainframe, and it was pretty funny. The guy was sliding cards in and stuff like that. If you get a chance, watch the show. It's an interesting look back. But, certainly the modern mainframe has come into the world of DevOps. And Rosalind, I think the work you've done with IBM has led the market with that. And quite frankly, Sam, the work CompuWare's done has led the market in Agile and DevOps on mainframes. How would you assess where we are currently in mainframes, in the world of DevOps?
You mean where the mainframe is or where people are? I think those are two very different things.
You're right. But we're not moving the whole company to the computer anymore, thank God. But let's talk about, where is the mainframe, and then we'll talk about where the people are.
So you've got to remember the mainframe itself, IBM Z, is the most modern machine out there. The IBM Z platform has evolved every few years ever since it was invented, and we keep evolving the machine. So the machine itself is the most modern system, and we've evolved the operating system. We've evolved things such that open source tools work there. We've done everything to remove the barriers from the system so that you can do exactly the same kinds of things, whether or not you're doing ZOS development or another environment. And the Z hardware itself, we all know it runs, we all know on this call, it runs Linux on Z. And so, it's a very large Linux server, and it runs containers, and it runs OpenShift. So from a system standpoint, it provides, there's nothing keeping it out of the processes and practices. There's nothing separating it from a system standpoint. It's the way people interact with the systems. It's their existing applications that make it harder.
Sam?
And, I think Rosalind makes some great points. I mean, the current generation of IBM mainframes, the Z15, is an engineering marvel. And the compilers and the operating system produce this amazingly efficient platform. It is the most efficient hyper-converged system in the world today. But I think the elephant in the room is the word that you used a minute ago, and you said modernization. And we alluded to this a little bit in the way that the practices that people and businesses have today. Well, modernization doesn't mean moving off platform, because we already talked about, and we could go on for an hour, about how great a hardware software platform this is for running business computing. It is amazingly efficient, especially when you look at the large scale global business applications that the Fortune 1000 run, which is where the platform has its largest footprint. So but perception is that modernization is moving your application into a cloud native application off the platform, hosted by another provider, or rewriting it in Java. And nothing could be further from the truth. The COBOL compiler alone is a perfectly paired piece of engineering with that platform and lets you wring every last ounce of efficiency out of it. But people need to get past that confusion and say, what if I could work on the platform in the same way I'm working on every other platform? It's that normalization. And, we've kind of coined the phrase mainstreaming the mainframe to make it different in syntax only. And Rosalind alluded to this. It's being able to work on this platform in the same way that you work with any other platform. So when you think about DevOps, that you have a DevOps tool chain that looks like other tool chains, that you can connect to all of the ecosystem partners that you're probably already using in distributed development. And people are definitely the problem. People and practices and culture. And more than 3/4, in fact, 78% of customers say it would be useful if they could update their mainframe applications more frequently than they do today. So there is an aspiration to change and to get better outcomes. And you can see what they want. They want to be able to deliver value to customers more frequently. And that's just one of the improvements that they want to make. But far too many people are not making progress on that.
Gerda, so you're not quote unquote mainframe, specialist, but certainly app modernization and testing of this. I'm wondering if you have any kind of information regarding, people using Tricentis to test mainframe-based applications, and is how big a market is that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So also really one major thing that you always have to keep in mind is, as we just said, especially when talking about app modernization, it is such a wide word and it can mean so many things to different people. And it's definitely something that's challenging for our customers looking at their current system landscape. So you see customers that are having everything in their landscapes, from mainframe applications to also often very legacy mainframe applications that are trying to move on to more cloud-based environments. So that is something that we see very often. But it's really, mainframes are still there, but the thing is that people really want to abstract away from the mainframe. Also, thinking about where we are today, I think an important question we have to ask ourselves is, why is everyone so into app modernization? Why is everyone into migration into the cloud currently? And if you think about it, nowadays every company basically is becoming a software company, and not every company has the talent and the resources to maintain those mainframe applications, because at the end of the day, honestly, I struggle finding COBOL developers nowadays out there. I went to the Technical University of Vienna, and we definitely did not learn anything around COBOL there, and it's really hard to find the talent nowadays. And when you look at it, so basically every company, be it like in retail, be it in banking, being like in the energy sector, you now want to have connected systems and so on. So really everyone is going more towards being a software company. And with that, for people, it's becoming more and more increasingly important to have like really good platform as a service offerings, maybe going into serverless or software as a service in the next step, but really having not really to deal with the underlying maybe mainframes and having a way of abstracting using simpler technologies and only caring about the applications and the data that they're running on those systems.
So I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I agree with that. I think, so here's the premise of this, right? When we talk about app modernization, right? I'd love to live in a world where I could throw out an old app because I want to have a new app, right? But we don't live in that world, right? And no one lives in that world. We that's why we call it app modernization. We tend to modernize the apps we already have, and so when we look at, I think out of the Fortune 100, 98 are on mainframes, or there's some number like that, Sam or Rosalind, if you know. I don't see 97 and a half of them throwing their mainframes out, right? As a matter of fact, they're probably building more on mainframes. And so what's happening is we're seeing whether you want to call it hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, whatever you want to call it, we're seeing where people can build maybe a front end for stuff in the cloud. But if that data is important, if security is important, right? If scalability is important, dollar for dollar, people who use mainframes know that that's their best bang for the buck. Mitchell, I'll let you chime in.
I have to jump in. So what's interesting is we kind of do this to ourselves with the terminology that we use. Mainframe is a word for a cabinet used to house the computers. The original IBM computers were were stored in. If I said, hey, 71% of Fortune 500 companies rely on high volume transaction processing platforms, 10 out of the 10 world's top insurers, 23 out of the 25 world's top airlines, 92 of the top banks, percent of the top 100 banks rely on high volume transaction processing platforms, you would say, wow, that's pretty cool. And it runs Linux and it runs containers, and you can connect it to all kinds of applications from tablets and phones to wherever your application may be running on cloud or on premise. You'd say, wow, tell me about that. I'd like to learn about that. That's what mainframes are. So it's interesting. It's not going away. And we do this to ourselves. I said the analysts have done this to us too, right? Today, it's all about this next shiny object, this squirrel moment. It is so vital to businesses today, and moving it into how we create software with DevOps and processes like that and tools to support it is essential for businesses, both economic recovery, survival, and future. Digital strategies can't happen without it for many, 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 many companies. Okay, did I do a good job, Rosalind and Sam?
Mitch, those were great stats, and I think you did a great job quoting them. And I boil that down to simply saying the worldwide economy and worldwide civilization runs on the mainframe. And I like the word mainframe. It has a little swagger. I don't think it's ever going to go out of style.
Nostalgia.
And renaming the platform could make it cooler. It simply gets things done. We haven't renamed cars yet. Maybe we'll rename them to highly efficient transport platforms, but I think we'll still be calling them cars when they have electric engines powered by portable fusion reactors. But customers see this as a long-term platform. So BMC does an annual mainframe survey, and the 2020 edition is going to launch soon. And I can tell you that 90% of the customers see the mainframe as a platform for growth and long-term applications. 68% of them expect the size of that compute platform to grow, MIPS to grow. 67% of those organizations have the majority of their data on the mainframe. They trust it because, as you said, it's highly available, scalable, secure. And to go back to Gerda's key point, about younger workers, that is absolutely essential. But what's going on is that people are addressing that, because I think Rosalind and I both alluded to this. The syntax of COBOL isn't, Aramaic. It isn't some incomprehensible script. If you put modern tooling around this, if you put modern process and a great supportive culture that gives you have a great developer experience, you have a great developer culture, then learning the syntax of COBOL is no more difficult than learning the syntax of Perl or Rust or Go. So we see that customers who see the platform long-term are making the appropriate investments. And in the responses to that survey I mentioned this year, younger mainframe workforce definitely figures in. 43% less than 5 years on platform. 68% were under 49 years old. And 60% of that new generation see this as a growing platform. And that really matches the experience that I've seen, in CompuWare's journey, is that we hired out of college, and we have been hiring out of college, and those next-gen developers are more than a third of our workforce now in Detroit. And many of them did not know COBOL, and many of our applications are written in assembler. They certainly didn't learn assembler in college. But what they did have was a strong bent for learning new technologies. Many of them came with computer science degrees. They had learned how to learn. They were what Gartner calls polyglot programmers, 1, 2, 3, many in learning languages. So whether we needed to learn assembler or COBOL or C, it didn't matter as long as we provided that supportive culture, the vehicles for learning, and we gave them meaningful work early on in their employment, and made sure that they understood the vision, mission, and goals of the firm, how they were contributing to something that matters. And I think our customers are having similar success in onboarding next-gen developers by doing some of these same things.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the statement, I can't find COBOL developers, because when I was hired in to work in this industry, nobody assumed you knew the language or the system you were going to work on. That was the thing you learned. You learned how to develop And then you came in and learned the company's culture and the company's tool choice. By using modern tools, modern practices, all of these things, the things they've learned in college on how to do, they've already got. And then the only thing they're doing is learning COBOL. And as I always joke, it's just English. And I know that works really well in the US and parts of the world. And in other parts, it's still a foreign language. But it's not a difficult language. It's easy to understand. PL1, another one, it's not difficult to understand. It's just another language, and developers can learn other languages. But I am kind of with the discussion about the mainframe is not the word we should always use. And we really need to focus on how do we talk about our platform. I like the term mainframe too. I still use it, but can we talk about our platform as this platform that provides this valuable high transaction server? It's that big server, and it's that big server as part of your pipeline. It's not that old thing. It's that big new thing that runs all this work. And now let's focus on the applications that. Honestly, the best thing IBM ever did was a program you compiled in 19 whatever still works today. And the worst thing IBM ever did was that program that you compiled in 19 whatever still works today. It's the best and the worst of the platform. You don't have to change. It still just works. And if we can help companies understand, if they start to change some of those, they can do the automated testing, they can do all those things, they can get more value out of their platform, they can help refactor and be able to move at the speed they need to.
So go ahead, Gerda.
Yeah, these are all amazing points, and I hope no one got me wrong at the beginning with what I wanted to say. So really, it is something to. I really like what Rosalind just said, to talk about the underlying platform that is really enabling everything. But the point that I really wanted to make is that most companies are now becoming software companies. So we don't have that knowledge center of IBM where there are so many smart people and you can learn from people and really develop that amazing platform that you offer other companies. But when I look at our customers, it's usually kind of self-built kind of mainframes that are sitting there, that are not maintained, that don't apply to current recent security standards. In those customers, what you see them do often is they all hear the cloud is the next thing. We all have to go to the cloud. And they all do this one big mistake that they just take whatever they have and they basically do the lift and shift approach, bring it to the cloud and hope that everything's going to work. Of course, that's not going to work at all. Also from a cost perspective, that is insane, thinking about how much cloud resources actually cost you if you don't do all the optimizations and so on. So what you see people do is kind of a step-by-step learning approach where they are taking things from not so secure systems, bringing them over to other systems, then starting to refactor the applications and giving more and more also responsibility to the development teams. And once they do that, you see the development teams really getting that DevOps approach, really caring about the infrastructure and so on. And for the developers, of course, it's easier if they have container-based applications that they can simply deploy and so on. But of course, underlying, it's very, very important that you have a secure and great platform that is enabling all of that.
So I think that's a great case for why you'd want to use a mainframe or whatever you call it, because it's probably more secure than the cloud is, I think, and it's been proven. But here's an interesting thing I'll tell you is here I see in Devops.com, right? This is Devops.com, mind you. And it was surprising to me. Our biggest article last year on Devops.com, most views, most comments. The Beauty of the COBOL Programming Language by Bob Resselman. I forget, I don't know, it had 500,000 or something, maybe more, like a crazy amount of views. And most of the comments were by COBOL programmers in India, because there they recognize that there's such a need for COBOL programmers that you have a lot of young people who are studying COBOL because they know it's basically a guaranteed job for them, right? And they come out and they start working right away. Here's another interesting thing that my friends at Tricentis will appreciate this. What do you think was another huge area of interest in DevOps.com? Running SAP in a DevOps world, right? We don't think of SAP as DevOps enabled, or, maybe not even agile. But yet, even we did a roundtable a week or two ago on SAP and DevOps. I had to cut the questions off and these were meaty questions. How do I do this, that, and this, that release, right? It wasn't just pie in the sky. They were very how-to, practical. We're running SAP and we're moving towards Agile and DevOps and we're doing these things. So while everybody, we always rush to the shiny new trinket and the hot thing in our industry, I think the fact is, certain things endure. And as Rosalind said, it's both their greatest and worst attribute. It is. But let's talk a little bit about app modernization, because I think Gerda alluded to it. And Mitchell, I'll throw it out at you. No one wants to do shift and lift or lift and shift or whatever. It didn't work in 2005 when the cloud first started, and it doesn't work now. But how do we do app modernization right in a Z environment? Sam, CompuWare's made it was the reason for your being in a lot of these last couple of years, right? Something Chris O'Malley always harps on. How do you do modernization right in a mainframe world like this?
So first, you do it on platform, because I can't say that enough. When you see people try to avoid touching the mainframe apps that live on the mainframe, they do unnatural things from an architectural point of view, and they create these horrible kludges that are not robust, that are not scalable, that are not the most efficient implementation, and that aren't easy to maintain. So you want to bring those practices on platform. You want to provide developers with helpful editors, with quality tools. You want to tap into automation pipeline. So build a CD pipeline that goes right onto your platform, so that you give developers a great developer experience, but you keep the business logic and the data on the platform. And that goes to a number of things. You talked about security, something that I learned a long time ago. The more copies of data you have, inherently the less secure it is, because typically when mainframe data is moved off the mainframe, the security controls that are on the platform are not replicated. So if you can take that core business logic, that digital DNA that a business has inscribed over 20, 30, 40, 50 years, continue to leverage that. And of course, leverage systems on the platform. And CompuWare really blazed this trail of using cloud and mainframe together with two platform IT. We think these things are incredibly complementary. But what you don't need to do is replicate that data all over the place. You don't need to necessarily have a lot of on-prem systems. The term hybrid cloud was used, and that's a nice modern way to talk about that. We say two platform IT because these things will pair very, very well. And the cloud, by the way, is an absolutely great place to host commodity applications. If you talk about your company's email system, I probably cannot run Microsoft Office better than Microsoft can with Office 365 in the cloud. And they can provide all the qualities of service, the latest updates. It's a good solution. Can I do invoicing better than a cloud provider like NetSuite or Oracle? Probably not. But what I want to do is focus on those applications that give me unique business advantage, the things that I wouldn't find in Amazon, Google, or Microsoft's application catalog. Those applications give me a competitive advantage. And in updating them, I increase that competitive advantage. So I can provide new features, new capability. So I want to take that on-platform application, I want to bring to it things like automated testing, make it part of a CD pipeline, give my developers a great set of tools and give them a great culture of development to help the firm be successful. That is the best approach to modernization I know of. And of course, I work very hard to provide those things, including, program understanding, so that developers can really get into code that they may not be familiar with. Because like when I talked about younger mainframe workforce, that's a good thing, but it also means that I don't have people who've sort of apprenticed with an application for 10 years before being allowed to do important changes. And, you have people who are new to your firm and they're being tasked to do important work. So they need to be able to understand an application that may be older than they are quickly enough to, inside a 2-week agile sprint, make a change, test it. Hopefully there's already automated tests present, but if there's not, they want to write some new automated tests and deliver that all as working demonstrable code at the end of that sprint, because that's the way the world works today. So if you do that, you're blazing down the road towards application modernization. And it's easy to talk about, but it boils down to just hard work.
Alan, I think that to build on what we've said here, I look at it as three elements to the strategy here. And this is just also sharing my own personal experience with doing this. First is the people and the culture and the getting our heads around new processes, new ways of, or additional ways of doing things. That's what DevOps is about. Second is processes and tools, which Sam is just eloquently talking about. I think the third obstacle to app modernization is this tackling the monolith, because a lot of our applications were built differently, that we're looking at how do we modernize. Well, why do you want to modernize it? Sometimes it's because we have to figure out a way to get in there and better maintain it because it's just kind of too scary to tackle. The people that built it aren't there anymore. Another reason, though, is, and I think the way to tackle that sort of monolith part of it is looking at our applications and saying, what functionality, what capabilities, business capabilities in the apps are most important to having the most flexibility or improving the speed at which we can improve that software to respond to and support the business. If we're living in a world of changing how we're delivering services into contactless, we're living in a world where supply chains are going to from inventory to on demand, whatever it may be, examine those applications, pick out where those elements are, and those are good candidates to go in and say, let's carve out that piece and look at some newer alternative designs for how we can more easily maintain or more quickly develop capabilities in that part of the software. Doesn't mean you move it off the mainframe, may stay there, may be a combination of things. But that's also part of app modernization. It's how we create software and the tools that we do it. And sometimes how do we take on really big problems, but divide them into much smaller pieces that we can do something about.
Yeah, the application modernization of a Z application does unfortunately involve understanding it. And so having those tools for application understanding is the first key, but then actually understanding the business is the other key. And so it's a combination of application modernization tools and understanding the business domains you're trying to go after. Really thinking about what are the areas, what are the focus areas, and understanding what you need to run. Lots of discussion about microservices, and I always question, do you really want a microservice or do you want a service? What level is the right componentization for this function? And I always use banking example because this one's the easiest. I need my credit card swipe to happen, and I only have a certain number of nanoseconds, whatever it is, to make that happen. I'm not going to make that 1,000 microservices. I'm not going to make it 100. I'm going to make it a service. That service has to run fast. It has to be efficient. So it needs to be written as not a monolith, but a service itself. Where is that service? Is it bundled in the middle of something else that's doing a whole bunch of other function? Can I strip it out? Can I make it? I need to look at the applications. And so using application understanding and the skills we still have today, because in many companies, they actually still have a few people left that wrote those apps. not maybe for much longer, but they have them now. Let's start to use application understanding, the next generation, and learn from each other. I think the next generation, the newer developers, have a lot of skills in a lot of the new tools, and the people my age have the experience in the app. So let's bring these people together to help build this new culture, to help bring this together. Let's take advantage of both sides and the tooling, because even if they helped write the application, they still don't know the whole thing anymore. It's a monolith. Bring it together and take advantage of these people. Use the people, both sides of the people. Bring all those skills together with the tooling to actually help you understand the business domains, the functions that you want to do, and split up that monolith. And maybe you're splitting it up into a bunch of COBOL programs. Doesn't matter. You're providing the business value that you need to in a more maintainable, manageable way.
Fair. Guys, we're running closer to the edge on time. I wanted to touch on the issue, though, because it's what Gerda does a lot of, and that's around testing, right? As we're modernizing these applications, mainframe applications, we're keeping them on the mainframe. Maybe we're hybridizing them, if that's a word, right? Putting, front end here, back end there, whatever. We're modernizing the applications. Testing is an important part of it, as it is always. Anything special in particular that we're doing around the testing of the modernization of mainframe applications that perhaps is different than, Gerda, go ahead.
When you think about testing, really, just as the whole topic of app modernization, also testing can be split into so many different bits and pieces. So the one bit is really the architecture that we're speaking about. Where is everything hosted? Are we dealing with a monolith versus are we splitting everything up into service-oriented architectures or microservices or whatever we want to call those things, really making sure that we shift testing more to the left, that we make sure that the components are tested and such. Then the other side is really around the infrastructure. So really thinking about, do you have those physical servers or do you have now more VMs, cloud-based environments? Do you have containers and so on where you're hosting your applications? Making sure that the intersections are tested properly. And then another point that's also very important is really also the process side of things. So the delivery side, are you having like more of a waterfall environment or are you going more towards an agile DevOps environment? And all those things also go hand in hand. So it's not the typical approach would be, especially you would have some more legacy type of applications that are running in the background that are really the backbone of your business. And then you would have more flexible applications built on top of that. And for each of those, you need different testing approaches. And something that we saw here, especially when we say shift testing to the left, was that while it was so far really possible to shift testing to the left when it comes to testing, doing unit testing, doing API testing and so on, it was always very hard when it came to end-to-end testing, especially across systems, when you have different systems, older systems, newer systems, all working together. Because there you really didn't have that concept of just defining your tests up front, and once everything is ready, you just run your tests. It was really very difficult, especially now I'm focusing on the space of UI testing. Currently in the UI space, it was basically impossible to do that. And that is also something where AI approaches can help in the future, because if you look at the applications that we're interacting with, no matter what technology is used in the background, no matter what type of programming language we're using, if we're having something in the cloud or on a server, it doesn't really matter. How we interact with applications as humans hasn't really changed so much over time. When you look at banking systems from 20 years ago, I made an analysis, they look just the same like today. It's really the applications that we work with on a day-to-day basis, although they move from one platform to the other, the technology keeps changing, bits and pieces keep changing. The way we interact with it really doesn't change so much. So there it really helps to bring in AI-based approaches that help you kind of take that human perspective when performing those tests to really be platform independent.
Excellent. Sam, Mitchell, Rosalind, any thoughts on testing and app modernization with Mainframe?
I would just jump in and say it's a great place to start. Not to say you're starting from scratch, but maybe you are. That whole CI/CD testing. And as Gerda was saying, you can use cross-platform approaches, right? It doesn't have to be one set of tools for this, one set of tools for that, et cetera. It can be, but there are some advantages to leveraging that knowledge base that Rosalind was talking about. You've been doing testing now. How can you take that to the next level, whether it's getting quality up or speeding up how quickly you can do releases, whatever the driver might be. And as Gerda talked about, those are some fantastic approaches to take.
Rosalind?
Yeah, testing is one of the ways that we see people getting value fast. And it some ways takes less cultural change. It's easier maybe to get them to do automated testing, and automated testing is actually what makes you faster. You need that ability to test the system, and shifting left using virtual services, shifting left by virtualizing the whole system, allowing you to test your application in the build process, doing unit test really does help in the mainframe space to get that feedback really fast. I mean, it helps in every space actually, but in the mainframe space, we seem to have forgotten this. I don't know why. When I started, we did it. Okay, 20 years later, people forgot. Getting to that unit testing, that automated unit testing, and making sure we're doing that virtual testing, whatever it is, to get that application transaction and really have that capability. And there's lots of tools out there to do the testing. And the other part is it has to be cross-platform because most Z applications are not Z only. So things, open source tools like the Galasa framework that help you test across distributed in Z matter. Things like test data as a service matter. Use optimizations, looking at AI for data and understanding what data should you feed this. And multiple people have capabilities around that to look at the right data to test to make sure you get that fast feedback all the way at the beginning and get that developer that input so they aren't waiting that 6 months of testing, that late stage testing that is the reason why everybody says the mainframe is so slow because they spend too much time at the end testing. Let's shift that all and bring it to the beginning. And then, there are people delivering weekly into production because they have automated testing in place.
Absolutely. Sam, going to give you the last word, then I got to wrap it up.
No, I think automated testing, and you have to underscore automated, is critically important. It's one part of this, and it's not about the old, fast, cheap, good, pick two. People need to continuously improve quality, velocity, and efficiency on the platform, and automated testing is a key part of that. You will get measurable results, and you have to measure the results. So you have to put automated tests in place, you have to put quality aids in place, and then you have to measure that. And if there's one thing that we probably didn't spend time today on that I think is a worthy thought for people to put front and center, it's you've got to measure from the very beginning what you're doing, because any effort like this is going to entail some amount of spend in terms of resources. It is a worthy spend. It is the natural evolution of development for the platform. But you have to treat your developers like the high-performance athletes that they are. You have to give them continuous feedback. So, use an analytics platform where you can understand what's going on with your development process, what's going on with your testing, so that you can see the results. And, for when I looked in-house, what we were able to see is that as we evolved our development approach from waterfall to agile, and we put these, automated tests in place, we gave our developers a great developer experience, continually improving their tooling and our tool chain, we were able to get measurable results, like 25% more trapped defects that were caught before they ever escaped into customer hands. We were able to get twice as much code from individual developers, and deliver at the speed of business. We didn't get those results if we didn't make the changes, including automated testing, including a great developer experience. None of it is optional. You don't get a hall pass on any of this. Pick one and start, but you really have to think this is a journey, and you're going to have to address all of these if you're going to get the outcomes that you want and be the most competitive that you want. And I've seen customers getting amazing results that are measurable by outside firms where they've done studies and been able to see more than a 467% ROI from implementing automated testing and building net new applications on the mainframe. So this works. I've seen the proof points. I've seen the customer case studies. I would just urge people who have been sitting on the sidelines to get in, because the competition absolutely is modernizing the way they build applications on the mainframe.
That was a strong finish, Sam. Thank you very much. Good stuff. Hey, Sam Knudsen, VP Product at CompuWare BMC Company. Rosalind Radcliffe, Distinguished Engineer, IBM Enterprise Systems. Gerda Sheganaku, from Tricentis on product for AI testing. And of course, one and only Mitch Ashley. This is Alan Schimmel. Many thanks to Tricentis, by the way, for sponsoring Devops Unbound today. This is Alan Schimmel. We'll be back in about another 2 weeks with another great Devops Unbound. Stay tuned. But for now, that's it. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, happy Tuesday and happy New Year. Thank God we're in 2021, right? I am Charlene O'Hanlon and I am here with the Tuesday edition of the news headlines. First up on DevOps.com is an article that looks at digital transformation from the legacy systems perspective. This is the feature topic of the month, digital transformation, and especially for the enterprise. And this article asks the age-old question, should legacy systems stay or should they go? The answer depends a lot on what value the legacy systems provide from a service, customer, and even vendor partner perspective. This is a great article that outlines the reasons why organizations should or should not update their legacy systems to meet their digital transformation needs. And it's one definitely worth checking out if your organization is struggling with whether to rip and replace or simply update accordingly. We also have an article about site reliability engineering, or rather, strategic SRE assessments. Many organizations find themselves tripped up in their DevOps efforts by operations that can't quite keep up with the pace of change required. If they can't keep up, they can't successfully transform their traditional IT operations to SRE. This article looks at how strategic SRE assessments can help organizations better understand where their weaknesses are so they can successfully transform. A strategic SRE assessment is a key tool to help leaders understand, obtain the strategy, and create a roadmap that will successfully transform traditional IT operations to SRE. This article takes a look at what a strategic SRE assessment is, what it can show organizations, and how it can help them clear the hurdles in making the transition. Over on Container Journal, we are reminded that this is a new year, like we needed the reminder. And with the new year, we will most definitely see an increase in Kubernetes security issues. This is judging by the number of vulnerabilities that reared their ugly heads in 2020. But will this certain wave of Kubernetes vulnerabilities be what slows progress in the cloud-native space this year? Obviously, every security issue should be a concern, but there are levels of severity with each vulnerability. This article says that organizations should be aware of these security issues and act accordingly, as some vulnerabilities are much more critical than others. On the whole, however, these vulnerabilities should not be the reason why an organization decides to not move forward with cloud-native technologies. Rather, organizations should treat these security issues the same way they would any other data or any other threat to their data or their infrastructure, with a healthy balance of knowledge and common sense. Over on Security Boulevard, we kick off this month's feature topic of security challenges and opportunities of remote work with an article that looks at online gaming. With the holidays just ending, I imagine we are not the only household with a new PS5. Whether you're the ones battling aliens or your kids, or both of you, I'm not judging, your gaming console could be another attack vector for hackers in infiltrating your organization's network. Especially for your remote workers. How many networks are you currently running at home, and how many devices do you have on each network? If you've got your work laptop and your gaming device connected to the same network, you've just opened a portal, so to speak. Hackers could compromise your network via compromised gaming sites, in-game spam, or notices on a message board with links for game patches. Long story short, keep your work systems and gaming systems on separate networks to keep your organization's data safe. All right, that was an abbreviated news headlines for today, Tuesday, January 5th. I welcome you back to a new year, and I hope to see you guys again. I'll be back on Thursday with a new edition of News Headlines. So until then, stay safe.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everybody, welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with Guillermo Rauch, who is the CEO and co-founder and founder of a company called Vercel, which, and you also are the creator of Next.js. So, hey Guillermo, thank you so much for taking a couple minutes and talking with me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about Vercel and the Next.js React framework.
Yeah, so the most important piece of infrastructure in our mind that powers websites nowadays is the front end. Mm-hmm. The front end is where you see every visitor, every customer come through and meet your brand, buy your product, read your content. And in some ways, this is a very challenging technology to execute really well in. It's really hard to create a really fast, really high performance website that converts really well. And this has sort of become obvious over the past few years where, when you use the web, you notice sometimes like it's just not living up to the standards of performance that you expect. And sometimes you've gone over probably to like a native app because it's just not good enough. However, the web is the most important open platform in the world today. And companies like Vercel are helping really push it forward, give developers the best possible tools to build highly interactive front ends that perform extremely well and scale worldwide.
Well, it's all about the user experience these days, especially with the pandemic. So I imagine your technology is very well received. You guys just got some funding, right?
Yeah, so we raised a $40 million Series B round led by GV.
That's great. That's great. So Series B, which means that you had a Series A round, was it earlier this year?
Yeah, actually in April. So it was just around when the pandemic in the US, at least, was sort of at its peak in some sense of panic, I would say. So something interesting that happened was back in March this year, when the pandemic was really like the top concern in everyone's minds, we didn't really know what was going to happen to our business. We didn't really know what was going to happen to the tech world. But one of the things we noticed was in just 1 week, we saw 2,500 different websites and applications be published to our platform related to the pandemic alone. Mm-hmm. All kinds of like COVID trackers and informational websites. So we started noticing that, we still kind of like that glimmer of hope. It seems like front-end developers are as busy as ever, as engaged as ever. They're rolling up their sleeves. And then we kind of saw throughout that these companies, especially in the e-commerce space, in the content space, we're seeing even more demand for scaling their front end, for making them faster, for publishing more. They were seeing elevated traffic as well. So it turned out our platform saw explosive growth all throughout the pandemic. and so did our open source framework Next.js. So we started getting a lot of inbound interest from investors that were seeing that their own portfolio companies and people were gravitating towards our platform to solve their web related problems.
That's great. Right place at the right time, huh? And if I guess if there's any silver lining to the pandemic, that it is the fact that organizations such as yours have really experienced that level of growth. And as I said before, the user experience is paramount these days for successful organizations. Just not only to to put forth obviously a positive view or reputation, but also to just basically to enable people to do what they need to do to survive these days. I mean, e-commerce.
Absolutely.
It's crazy how many people have turned to e-commerce exclusively to acquire what they need, just in their everyday life.
Yeah, and we're talking to a lot of companies that had been underestimating how important this foundational technology would be. And they had some investments. Everyone had a VP of digital, right? Like everyone had a digitalization effort ongoing. Mm-hmm. But the pandemic has just made them notice they need to accelerate, and that means accelerating that accelerating that user experience.
Yeah. So what do you see then, considering the fact that, the user experience is such a major factor now for organizations? Do you kind of see perhaps I don't know if it's the development process or, is there anything that's going to be changing or is changing already among organizations?
Yes.
The way maybe they build applications or?
Absolutely. So the biggest change that we saw this year is there's a tremendous amount of demand to make everybody in the company participate in that front-end development process. And that doesn't mean knowing how to code. So this is the important distinction here. So one of the patterns that we've seen is the front-end developer chooses Next.js and Vercel, and then they can combine it with a series of database technologies. And we call these technologies a headless CMS that can enable then the rest of the company to collaborate and contribute to that front end. So you might want to submit news. You might want to submit new COVID guidance. You might want to submit a new promotion for your e-commerce storefront. That kind of need for rapid communication that you were kind of alluding to earlier. We saw a lot of that this year. So the front-end developer sort of acting as the amplifier of everybody in the company, not just, this is not a self-serving tool where the developer, got a better power drill. Mm-hmm. It's literally a platform such that everybody can collaborate and contribute to that process. So that's why you see so much interest being floated around technologies like no code. The idea is that code is not going to gatekeep everybody from contributing to these websites.
I think that's a great idea, and we actually just did a whole virtual summit on low code technologies. So and the low code experience, I think that is definitely a process and a technology whose time has definitely come. It's interesting because we have been talking about low code on the sites on devops.com specifically for a good 4 years or so. It was always one of those kind of fringe technologies, if you will.
Totally.
And the rise of the citizen developer, people think it was, still the guys in the basement who are kind of coding in their spare time. But no, I mean, it's the folks in the marketing department. It's the, it's the HR putting out the new, policies and procedures on the internal website. It's all that stuff. So I'm kind of jazzed about the whole idea of low code technologies and being able to enable organizations to, really kind of push their entire business beyond its current boundaries. And I think, another silver lining there, I think the pandemic has really shown the need and the advantages, the benefits of having low code technologies and helping organizations just, not only survive, but thrive in this really, really tense situation we're all in. So what's next for you guys?
Yeah, so along those lines, one of the biggest things we realize as we work with larger and larger organizations is that we notice that making change happen, it's not just about the tool. So like tools have been, exchanged and recreated, and companies have gone through re-platforms of all kinds and new programming languages and new shiny objects all the time. One of the things we realize is that what makes change happen is giving everybody the ability to experiment. Everybody should be able to put a hypothesis forward about how to change something. And that doesn't mean that the change will be reflected instantaneously, but it's giving the company the ability to measure and start testing the waters a little bit. So a great example here would be, if you're an established e-commerce company, you might not want to risk, saying, okay, like our new homepage will tomorrow be this new thing. We'll revamp the logo, we'll change the fonts, we'll do a new type of promotion. The idea is that you kind of have to take bets and put forward experiments and hypotheses. So what we envision for the future is that everybody in the company will be able to submit hypotheses. Due to this investment into low code, everybody will be able to do it. You won't need to know necessarily how to code. But instead of just making very strong, harsh changes, you'll be able to measure and control experiments around your audience. And that'll inform what truly works and what doesn't work. And that'll reduce the risk and make everybody more courageous to participate in changing those websites and that content.
Wow. Sounds fascinating, and I wish you the best of luck. I think it's a great, just the entire mindset and the entire process around application development and the front end developers and their roles in helping kind of usher in a new era of web design. I think is good stuff. Really, really great.
Thank you.
Carmel, thank you so much for taking the time and talking me, through what you guys are up to, and hope we can have you back on TechStrong TV and another time and talk a little bit more about what's happening with you guys and just in the developer space in general.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right, great. Excuse me. Thank you again. And everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community: digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Hey everybody, what's happening? Today is Tuesday, January 5th, and I'm Charlene O'Hanlon here with the newest webinars preview for the year. So without further ado, let's get right going. First up, we have a number of webinars on devops.com, Security Boulevard, and Container Journal that are coming up throughout the month. This week is kind of light on webinars, but we have a plethora of them for going through the rest of the month. But the first one I want to let you know about is happening Thursday, January 7th. It's called Modernizing Jenkins CI/CD Pipelines, and it's happening at 1 p.m. Eastern on devops.com. It is sponsored by Harness. We all know Jenkins. It is the de facto standard for continuous integration. It has been for the past decade or so. But as teams are modernizing their applications and migrating to cloud and microservices, the ability to scale Jenkins for CI/CD has become a super challenging thing. So this webinar takes a look at how Jenkins CI integrated with Harness CD can help modernize CI/CD pipelines. So among the key takeaways that this webinar promises, CI and CD are two different worlds that can be integrated seamlessly. The reuse of Jenkins jobs scripts is possible with today's leading CD solutions. And cloud-native CI/CD pipelines can be built in minutes and can empower engineers to deploy on demand at any time. The next webinar I want to let you know about is happening next Tuesday, January 12th at 1 p.m. Eastern on Devops.com. It is called Monitoring Serverless Applications with Datadog, and it focuses on how Datadog's platform can help monitoring serverless applications with AWS Lambda. Highlights of the webinar will include how to set up a Twitter bot that makes API calls with Node.js, how to deploy serverless applications, and what observability looks like with less infrastructure. Definitely one worth checking out if you're using AWS Lambda and you're looking for some help with monitoring your serverless applications. All right, the final webinar I want to let you know about today is also happening Tuesday, January 12th. This one is 3 p.m. Eastern on Devops.com. It's called Role-Based Access Controls for SSH and Kubernetes Access with Teleport, and it is sponsored by Teleport. This webinar takes a look at the Teleport technology in helping enterprises manage access to their SSH and Kubernetes resources via role-based access controls. With Teleport, employees are able to provide granular access controls to developers based on the access they need and when they need it, which this makes it possible for them to maintain secure access without getting in the way of their developers' daily operations. So this webinar will demonstrate how organizations can assign access to developers and SREs across environments using the Teleport technology through roles mapped from enterprises, identity providers, or SSOs. All right, that's all that I have for this edition of the webinar's preview. Please check back on Thursday when I'll have a fresh batch for you. Until then, have a great day, everybody, and please stay safe. All right, next up on TechStrong TV, we have an interview between Mitch Ashley and Jyoti Bansal, who is the CEO and co-founder of Traceable.ai. They talk about true security issues in modern software architectures and how taking a software perspective on security complements existing security capabilities in most organizations. Great conversation, so let's give this one a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
The pleasure of being joined today on a really interesting topic. I'm certainly very interested in it, by Jyoti Bansal, who is CEO and co-founder of Traceable.ai. Welcome, Jyoti. Good to be talking with you.
Glad to be here. Good to be chatting, Mitch.
Excellent. Well, the new year, let's talk about security. It's on a lot of people's mind, but I think it's especially around software architectures and cloud native. Before we get there, I'd love to have you do a little introduction. Tell us about yourself and tell us about Traceable.ai.
Sure. So my background is I'm a product guy. I'm an engineer. I like to solve problems for software engineers and complex engineering organizations. Building complex software, and it's getting a harder and harder problem, right? So my first company that I started was a company called AppDynamics. And AppDynamics was in monitoring and troubleshooting of software problems. As we build these modern distributed systems, how do you make sure everything runs smoothly? AppDynamics was acquired by Cisco about 3 years ago. A day before we were about to go public. After that, I started a second company called Harness. And Harness is in the space of simplifying really continuous delivery, CI/CD, DevOps, all the challenges that you see in the DevOps teams struggle with to become really top-notch, world-class in DevOps. And Traceable is my third company now that I've started to really go after the problem of next generation security for the next generation application architectures. And it's which I believe is one of the next major frontier, both in cybersecurity, but also for the software engineering teams, really.
I can see the entrepreneur's mindset. While you're doing the current company, you see lots of opportunities. So let's go solve that problem next. So excellent. Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because I'm always, as a fellow entrepreneur and repeat entrepreneur myself, I'm always fascinated by our stories, right? What led you to say, okay, of all the problems, because I'm sure there's more than one opportunity you considered doing next, why pick this one? Why pick sort of the application security within cloud native application? What was it said, this is where we're going to be successful? And you've been very successful, obviously, so far.
It's most of the times, you pick a problem because you have heard about that problem or felt that problem yourself in many ways. Like as entrepreneurs, that's when let's try to solve this, because you're hearing this and it seems like someone got to solve this problem. So for me, I have a bit of a unique advantage, being CEO at AppDynamics, CEO at Harness, which are very deeply involved in some of the, the most, I would say, sophisticated software engineering organizations in the world. And when as I talk to them, it just becomes clear to me, like, the biggest challenge for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years is really about, how do you secure all of these software architectures that you have built up now, or you're building now? You're moving to the cloud, you're moving to containers, you're adopting DevOps, agile development is everywhere. Developers are getting empowered to ship every day. There's a lot more velocity. There's a lot more micro architectures. There is a lot more distributed systems. All of that is happening. And, when I talk to these customers, it just became clear to me, like, that is the next major challenge that almost everyone needs to solve. And someone, needs to really help them doing that. So that's definitely one part of it. Right? The other element to me is like, I look at, there is no way like people or the world can operate everything on software if they don't feel that the software is secure. Almost all cybersecurity has been around securing the network. And which is great. Like that's the first thing. Like, if you're building a house and you want to secure the house, you put the doors and the perimeter defense around it everywhere first, right? But when you start getting into this new world where there is no house as such, everything is like, it's you're living in a commune in some ways. That's the new world of cloud architectures and all it is. How do you secure that? And in that world, it's just impossible to operate. We'll see more and more cybersecurity attacks and more hacks, and all of them will start getting more and more sophisticated at the code level. And as a software engineer, I look at like, the world is going to look at code, is run on code. We got to make sure every line of code is secured in some ways. And it doesn't really exist right now. So it seems like a interesting technical problem, that needs to be solved as well.
Well, when you make that shift, software is eating the world, right? Going back to Andreessen, security has to happen a different way, right? It's not boxes and protecting the exterior, interior, et cetera. It's, I guess one way to look at it is architecture is becoming much more dynamic as well as potentially porous. Mm-hmm. And I imagine both for software people and for security people, especially security people, love to look at that and say, I don't really fully understand this like I do network things, or like I did software the way we used to do it. What's going on here? What do I need to worry about? What do I need to do? And are the software teams know all about it? Need to know more? Where are they? What would you describe the state of software security in this more dynamic cloud world?
It's really, really early. I would say the things that have been done in the software security space are mostly around testing. That how do you test the software before you ship it to production? How do you find security bugs in that and maybe fix some of that? Mm-hmm. So to me, that's like the step one. That's the step two becomes like, once you ship your software, there's no way you're gonna ship perfect software when it comes to security. Mm-hmm. What do you do now? And the progress that's been made there is still really, really early. And it starts with the problem you described first is like the security people don't even understand what software is there. Because it starts with just a basic thing of even having an inventory of all the software, all the microservices, all the APIs, which APIs are used by whom, which APIs have sensitive data in them, which APIs are, are authenticated, which ones are not. Just, you can't really secure, anything until you understand what is there to secure, right? Mm-hmm. So, and in the world of the networks and all that, those problems were solved like long time ago. Now, in the world of software architectures, and this kind of, especially these modern software architectures, you have to start with even just those problems first. Like, how do you even have a very complete, accurate inventory of all the pieces of software, all the different APIs, all the different, microservices, who talks to whom, and that's your, your challenge number one. Once you will understand that, now it's like, okay, how do you protect that? Like, what are the modern hackers trying to do with those? You had the, a lot of the software security was initially, the early stages of it done was to do like the basic attacks, like your SQL injection and your, cross-site scripting. But now it's like the hackers are getting more sophisticated with them. You expose something through an API, and your API is a GraphQL API. In a GraphQL API, what a sophisticated hacker can do. Most of the engineering teams and most of the security teams really are so far behind even having the understanding of that at this point.
Well, and obviously you coming from the CI/CD world, right? So you know the workflow, the tool chain processes that are happening. Where in that flow or throughout that flow do you see that you're really spending more of your time focusing on with Traceable?
With Traceable, our focus initially is the end stages of that flow, where as the code starts getting deployed in production. We are what Traceable is doing it. We make it very easy for you to instrument the code in production, where we put the code in production. You put these micro agents that Traceable will provide, and very quickly we'll start drawing a picture of this is how all your code works, and this is all your microservices are, and these are all your APIs are, and this is the data that's being transferred. And then we'll figure out, like, out of this, these are the APIs or pieces of code that are vulnerable to some kind of a security problem. We'll give a risk score to it. And then we'll start protecting those, like, these are the risky APIs, and we'll protect them, like, when things are happening, with multiple degrees of protection that people can enable or not, right? But at the same time, we also bring it, and we encourage, the customers, the early customers that we work with, that also put that, one step earlier in pre-production as well. Like when you are going into your staging environments or your load testing environments, so you can start analyzing that behavior in those environments, and you can integrate into your CI/CD pipeline. Normally, the last stages of a CD pipeline before you go into production, where you are doing through the security analysis based on sort of like staging traffic or like high amount of traffic. So we can tell you these are the APIs or these are the code changes that you're pushing in production that potentially will cause these kind of security problems. The hardest challenge in security, in application security, in my mind, is securing production systems. That's where it's like people really have, people have nothing good right now.
Well, and that's obviously gets beyond the scope of one or a small team of people, right? It's now you're talking about the full environment, software on up. If it's all software virtualized. Well, it's interesting. You're describing it as, let's understand what we have, what APIs we're using, right? What containers, what kind of architecture, where those, potential security issues are. Then later in the process, what's happening in test and in production as it rolls out, and what do we do to protect that? Usually those are two different companies. It's sort of different strategies of doing it. It's not always somebody who's doing it the same. Why did you decide to tackle both? Is it you needed the first part to do the second part, or just to be more of a holistic approach?
I think you answered the question already. You need to do the second part right. You need to do the first part. The problem is the historical attempts at securing the code in production when you protect through like a WAF or RASP or those kind of technologies, they're all based on define some rules, and the rules will have some regular expressions to look for, like, is there a pattern of a SQL injection query or something like that, right? All of those become just so, let's say, they're impossible. In the modern systems, you just cannot keep up by defining rules. So what you have to do is you have to create a very intelligent system. You have to create intelligence that can learn based on what is the normal behavior of your application is. And the normal behavior, understanding of the behavior starts by understanding what is the application, what are the different microservices, what are the dependencies, what are the APIs, which APIs have sensitive data, who calls them, with what frequency. That's really if you don't understand it, you cannot really draw this kind of a knowledge graph of what's the normal behavior when someone is trying to do something, right? So that's our step one. But then we take it to step two, which is really getting deeper now, is what's the normal behavior of any particular user or any particular kind of user. So we'll do user profiling based on that these are the different categories of users that use your application or these particular APIs. This is the pattern of usage that they would do. Normally they will call in an API to initially log in, and then the second API would be to fetch some data, and the third API would be to use the data they fetch to do some operation, let's say. So now if you're seeing, so if we learn that, automatically that this is the normal behavior of how a user session would look like. Now you can build, a layer of AI that can understand anytime there is something abnormal happening. When say someone does that, you log in as user A, you fetch data for user A, but the developers didn't put a check after you want to do a real operation, and you're spoofing and doing operation on behalf of user B, which is one of common API security challenge. If you learn the normal behavior of how the user sessions look like, you can really figure out if there is abnormal behavior happening, and you can stop it, alert it, do something about it. So understanding of everything from the inventory of everything, the behavior of everything, and building this kind of layer of intelligence on top of that is really the only way to protect it. So that's why we felt like we have to do this together, where the understanding comes, and then the protection, they have to be in one product.
It's interesting, it's a bit of a comment on the state of the industry that's a novel approach, right? And it really is. And I agree with you, that whole context, you called it a knowledge graph that you're building, but that whole context normally is left to the software architects, the security people, to say, how do you apply these general set of things to my environment? And now you're talking about the whole behavioral part of monitoring and assessing what's happening. It seems like that would also give you a much faster pointing diagnostic to where the issues are when you're seeing those behavioral changes. You can say, these are the API calls that are not behaving, as we've seen in the past. We're seeing unusual things happening, and we know what they're for, and we know what they protect. So go look at these two first, because that's where real important sensitive data is being used or transferred.
Yeah, definitely. And you also have to add to it the data for forensics if something happened. So we look at you want to give almost everything for fire prevention, that people understand what to do to prevent any fire. Then you have to provide tools for if fire happens, how do you do the firefighting? And then third is you have to provide if once you did the firefighting and that happened, how do you do the forensics of it, postmortem of it? How do you learn from it? How do you improve from it, right? So then when we look at the product, we say we got to look at it in a more holistic way. More and more, obviously, you want to put on the fire prevention side, that people understand which ones are the risky APIs and where the data is flowing. And, even before someone does something, they can go and secure it. But the reality is the rate of change is something you need as a business now. It's impossible for any security team to go and tell the software engineers, don't move fast enough, move slow, and you're making too many changes and we can't keep up with it. Because software engineers are asked to make all those changes. That's a pressure of innovation that they have. How does the security team even keep up with all the change that are happening? I also operate in the CI/CD space, where we encourage and we see that almost every customer that we see in the CI/CD space, they want to do 10, 20, 30 deployments a day. So if you have 10, 20, 30 different software changes that are going in production a day, it's really I feel bad for the security people now. How do they even keep up with understanding any of that? So that's where you have to bring in a sort of a layer of intelligence to help them understand that.
It's essentially the transition the software people have already had to make, right? To that delivering much more frequent, changing how we do software. I'm curious. It seems to me you fit pretty well in a DevSecOps definition, really fitting the bill there. Is that something you're comfortable with describing how you're doing, or no? I mean, there's too many definitions for DevSecOps, and it's
no.
Is that label a pretty good pretty good description.
That is a good label. I think it's a little bit confusing these days what DevSecOps is. Like, everyone is defining it in different ways, as you said. But I do think the core of DevSecOps is that the developers have to be more involved in understanding security elements of the code and applications they're building. And the security people have to come closer to the code, and they have to understand the code and the challenges with it that comes with securing part of the code, right? So to me, it's like, and I've been around this DevOps and this kind of for some time now. It seems very similar to how DevOps happened, right? In the world of DevOps was when developers used to write code and throw it over the wall for ops to operate. And ops was fine because normally the skill set the ops people had was more about sysadmins. They were mostly sysadmins, network admins, and they will do a bit of the deployments, and that was fine. But the software started to get really complex, that the operational ops people with the sysadmin skill set really could not understand what to do with that code and troubleshoot when something went wrong, and how to even deploy it, and how to even fix problems in that and all that. So they had to bring developers in the mix in that, right? And the skill set started to change. That instead of like your ops people, instead of them being sysadmins and network admins, they also had to have a bit of a developer background or understanding of the code. Without that, it was impossible to operationally manage these systems, right? Same thing is happening in security. A lot of the traditional security skill set is about securing networks and servers. And now when you have to secure microservices and APIs and code, it's really that skill set has to evolve towards more of a, more closer to developers and code in some ways. And you also have to bring developers in it, because you have 10 application security people, and you have like 200, 300, 400 developers in a company, and the developers are making changes every day. And you have to involve developers to have a security mindset and also own the security aspect of the code they're building. Right. So again, very similar to DevOps, developers never cared about the operational aspects of the code they were writing. But with DevOps, they were encouraged to start caring about it. Same thing I see is happening with security now. The developers have to own and understand the security aspects of code that they're writing, because it's impossible to keep up otherwise. So that shift is happening. It's forced by that you just cannot keep up. The complexity of the code is too high. The rate of change is too high. So developers have to help the security people, and the security people have to also at the same time shift towards developers and code much more than what they have historically in terms of their skill set, in terms of where they spend time, etc.
Yeah, you and I are very much in sync about that. I've advocated for quite some time that security people just need to start by learning cloud native software architecture. Just get into it. You need to understand what you're securing. I'm curious. I mean, given its early days in this area, who do you approach to solve this problem? Who's approaching you? Is it the security people saying, I need something because I don't know enough about all of the details of the architecture, but help us there? Or is it more the software team of, I'm looking for something that I can take to my security folks, present it so they have all the information, they know that we're addressing this, and build that trust level on that way?
That's a very good question. I would say depends on the companies. In I would say majority of the cases still is the security teams. The security teams are that we cannot keep up with what the software teams are doing. We don't even understand the APIs. We are we are asked to secure our APIs. That's a challenge, and we don't even understand the services APIs, how to even get started by securing them properly. So that's definitely the majority of it. We also have a second case, which is where it's a VP of engineering in a company, and the VP of engineering saying, it's the first time I own security now, which is happening now. If you look at sort of a born in the cloud kind of company these days, the security is really owned by the engineering teams now. And it's like they don't even create a security team for quite some time. It's part of the security team is part of the engineering organization. And if you have engineering, will reach out to us and say, hey, I own security now. I need to understand this. How do I secure all these apps and services that we are that we are building? And when they are looking at it, from a different perspective. That the things that they're used to in the software architecture engineering world, observability, ability to trace everything in the code, bring it integrated as part of the CD lifecycle. All of those things become a bit more natural to them. So I do think we are going through a shift in the industry, and it's and so we look at both. Both personas are there that we have to serve. The software, in some companies it will be the software folks who want to own security and get better at it, and in many cases it's the security folks who wants to come closer and closer towards understanding how to secure software better.
Yeah, I think those are really good sort of customer journeys to think about where organizations are on those two curves. I'm curious the reaction of a security team looking for a solution from a software oriented company like yours. So your background's in software, CI/CD, et cetera. Not say you haven't been part of security too, but now you're a security solution, right? Versus on the other side of it, this might probably isn't something that a traditional network security company is going to solve, right? They don't understand software the way that you do. What's the reaction of security people when they say, you're a bunch of software people, what do you know about security? Or is it, yeah, you're a bunch of software people, you know about security,
Or we know about software to start with, but just my background and my co-founders, Sanjay, our background comes from the world of software, and we understand distributed software systems, how to watch those systems from a monitoring perspective, how to deploy change code, or CI/CD monitoring, everything about this distributed software systems is what the world we have lived in, right? But we also brought in a lot of really top-notch security experts to become part of our team. So, for example, there's the new spec in OWASP called OWASP API Top 10. The co-author of that spec, Inon is part of our team. Bringing a lot of expertise on, with the challenges with API security, for example. So we have brought in that we understand software. Yes, we don't come from the traditional network security, securing your infrastructure world. We come from the world of understanding software, but we bringing all this some of the best security experts as part of our team, so we can create this solution with a very different approach. So in some ways we think it's an advantage for us that we can think of it a bit differently. We come from the developer and software world, so we can understand how the modern software systems, it's, I look at a modern software engineering organization these days. They will be building their APIs in, say, GraphQL. That's the new way. The last couple of years, people are building APIs. If you talk to a security company or a security folks coming from the network world, they don't even know what GraphQL is.
GraphQL,
and the biggest challenge of VP of engineering or a software organization has, how do I secure these GraphQL APIs? They're so hard to secure. There's someone one mistake and everything, all my data will be stolen. So yes, our advantage is that we understand the software and APIs and code much better than most traditional security companies. And we think that allows us to create more novel approaches to solve this.
Excellent. I know it's definitely I think a very unique and interesting approach. What do you think is the most common misperception about security in these kinds of architectures? What are the beliefs that maybe don't hold anymore, or maybe what are the beliefs we need to start developing?
I think that the primary belief that doesn't hold anymore is that you can just rely on network security. That if you secure, you create the right firewalls and the VPNs and network security rules, that's enough. That's really not you are opening doors in your system through APIs. So unless you secure them, you can secure everything else. And the primary problem in the APIs is mistakes that developers will make. You would expect that your code is perfect and there is no mistake a developer made in an API. But if you have thousands and thousands of APIs and they're changing all the time, there would be mistakes somewhere. And all you need is one small mistake for someone to go and for a hacker to go and try to use that in bad ways. Mm-hmm. And some of the most sophisticated attacks that you've seen, the Facebook data breach, for example, and many of these, they all were done through APIs. Mm-hmm. Because because these are hard to really track and use. So So I would say the misconception is that you secure the network and you're safe, and you put an API gateway and you block some traffic and those kind of things. That's not really those are to me are the basics. The more that people have to go and understand the behavior of how a user is invoking your software, your application, your code, your APIs. And if there is abnormal something, you have to understand why is there abnormal behavior, and have to try to stop that abnormal behavior. Because I do think that's where the most sophisticated attacks are going to happen for the next many years.
I think it's a really good approach, because probably most security people aren't familiar with API economy, API centric, building the app with its own APIs approach. Now you really are. That is the central ingredient. And to your point, it's not uncommon, and it is somewhat easy to make a mistake just in the process and potentially create an exposure. I'm curious. Sort of, we're running out of time here, but .ai in your company domain, as well as Traceable AI. What's the AI part of Traceable?
AI is the core part of Traceable. So what Traceable, I'll maybe describe in a few sentences how Traceable works. So Traceable will provide these micro agents that you will put in your software systems, like on your Kubernetes clusters or your proxies like Nginx proxies, or inside the code. You can put these micro agents right inside the code. In a matter of minutes, we'll start watching what's happening, for every API, internal API, external API, what data is flowing through the systems, what microservices talk to whom. All of that will start capturing it. But now you capture all of this data. The real value starts when you build a very powerful layer of, ML models on top of it. What our ML models are trying to build there are, what is the normal behavior for each kind of, first of all, we try to say, like, what are the different kinds of users who use this thing? Just to figure out what are the different kinds of users need a, pretty sophisticated ML models. Then we are slicing them by, like, what is the pattern of usage for these kind of different, like, you can have, like, someone is a normal user and someone is an admin user, and so, and just to figure out, like, who are the admin users and who are the normal users based on their patterns of usage, and, like, which IPs they come from, what do they do, what do the length of their sessions look like, how many devices they log in from, what APIs they invoke after that, all those kind of things. You have to build a sort of an AI model to understand all of that, right? Mm-hmm. Then the second part of the AI model is the flow of data, like, because the core of what's happening in these systems is someone trying to steal data in many ways. You have so understanding flow of data is very part of, like, learning, like, how does data flow, which piece of data goes from, like, one microservice to another to maybe a third-party system somewhere. All of that is being learned with our AI system automatically. And the reason we rely so heavily on AI is because the change is so high in these environments that you really cannot do all of this by like a user configuring, like, this is how my system works, because no one even understands how the system works. So you have to watch it all, bring this. So we bring, like, massive amount of data into our system on, like, everything that your API, every single API call, everything the users are doing. And we're building this layer of intelligence that on top of it that will understand it all. And now, once you do that, now that becomes your protection system after that. Like, because now we know, like, okay, this is the normal behavior of how your APIs and your app and your services and everything works. And now anything abnormal happens, our layer of AI will detect it and, will do something about it. Either block the user, either block the IP address to, like, either maybe, like, all sort of other actions that could be done. Like, maybe someone can alert someone and people can investigate about it, like what's happening. Can you capture more data? Maybe you stop, like, a flow of data through that. So all kind of actions that are possible, once we build out the layer of AI.
Fascinating. I feel like we just scratched the surface. I'd love to hear more and more and more. Maybe we can do that on another time. We'll jump into the next level of next deeper into the pool, if you will. It's been great. I appreciate you joining us, and it is a fantastic topic, and I think a great market to be in. It's great to see you doing some unique things, and you have product and market. Where can folks learn more about, maybe get involved with what you're doing?
So it's our website is traceable.ai. If anyone wants to learn more about our product, go to our website, learn there. We have, we publish a lot of blogs as well about what we do on our website. Our product is in this kind of early availability right now. We work with about 15-20 early customers very closely as we are refining and building out our product. And if you have interest in solving these problems, just reach out to us through our website, and we'll love to have you part of our early program.
And if you don't have interest in solving them yet, you will.
Yes.
We all need better security in our applications. Well, it's been really fun talking with Jyoti Bansal, who is CEO and co-founder with Traceable AI. Wish you all the best with your early product. Keep in touch and let us know how things are going.
All right. Thank you, Mitch. Thanks for having me here.
You bet.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. That closes out today's episode of TechStrong TV. Join us again on Thursday when we'll have a new episode for you. We have great things ahead for 2021, so I hope you all will continue with us on this journey. Until then, we'll see you on Thursday, and have a great day. Stay safe.